Okay, so now the chemicals of life. This chapter is not in your syllabus, but if you don't know about this chapter, you cannot proceed in the other chapter. So this is actually the basic, but this is not pointed out in your syllabus, but you need it. So what are you made of? The bodies of all living things are made up of many different kinds of chemicals. Most of our bodies are made up of water. We also call them carbohydrate, proteins and fats. These substances are what our cells are made of. Each of them is vital for life. Carbohydrate, proteins and fat are polymers. You will learn about this more in the next chapters. In this chapter, we will look at each of these kinds of substances in turn. As you work through your biology course, you will keep meeting them over and over again. It will help you. It will help if you have a basic understanding of the meaning of the terms atom, element, molecule. If you are not sure about this, ask your biology or chemistry teacher to explain them to you. Okay, I want to explain you about this right now. So we all know what are the periodic table of elements. Okay, first of all I want to start with atoms. Now the basic unit of any matter is atom. Like the basic unit of a living organism is cell, but there are other smaller things like than cell, that is organelles like nucleus, ribosomes, but that is not the basic unit. The basic unit is the cell. And the basic unit of all matter, like this board, air, this wood, this floor, the tiles, is atom. So how does an atom looks like? An atom have a nucleus core which consists of protons and neutrons, and of course it has outer shells. So right now we'll actually look at the it is in the middle. So sorry, it is in the middle. Right now we'll look at the atom of an oxygen atom. An oxygen atom has 8 electrons. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm sorry. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So and there are protons and neutrons. This is an atom. Now we will come up to the term matter. Matter is anything that has weight and occupies space. Anything. Now I'm going to explain you what is a molecule. We all know what is a covalent bond in our chemistry. If two atoms are joined together by covalent bond, they are called molecules. Okay. Now think about an oxygen molecule. O2. Two oxygen atoms are held together by covalent bond, that is the molecular bond. Now ionic bonds are not molecular bonds. Molecular bonds, covalent bonds, are formed by sharing of electrons from the outer shell, and ionic bonds are formed by donation and by donating and accepting electrons from the outer shell. So if there is a, say, sodium chloride, it is for sodium and chlorine is joined by ionic bonds. It is not a molecule, but an oxygen, this is a molecule. So anything that is joined by molecular bonds is called a molecule. But unlike oxygen, say for example, if it is water, H2O. Yes, water is a molecule consisting of an oxygen atom and two hydrogen atoms joined by covalent bonds. But this is also a compound. So water is both a molecule because it is joined by covalent bonds, and it is also a compound. So what is a compound? A compound is like if it is an aggregation between two or more different types of atoms. Now you might ask, if O2, oxygen, is a compound. No, it's a molecule. H2O is a molecule and a compound. But think about NaCl, sodium chloride. It is joined by ionic bond. So it is not a molecule, but it consists of more than one kind of atom. So yes, sodium chloride is a compound. Now another term which is a bit confusing is elements. What are elements? Elements are, simply think about it, it cannot be broken into even simpler atoms, simpler form. Say for example, you can break water into oxygen atom and hydrogen atom, but an oxygen molecule, you cannot break it into simpler different types of atoms. If you break it, there will be only two oxygen atoms. Say for example, this is a sodium metal. It consists of only sodium atoms joined together by metallic bond. A sodium metal is not a compound because only one type of atom. A sodium metal is not a molecule. That's because not joined by covalent bonds. A sodium metal is an element consisting of many sodium atoms. Let me explain you with another example, the example of water. So water is a compound because it is joined by more than two types of atoms, hydrogen and oxygen. Water has two elements, hydrogen element and oxygen element. Okay, water has three atoms, two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. An atom is not an element, but an element consists of the same types of atoms joined together. If something is joined by covalent bond, it is called a molecule. And if something is joined by say ionic bonds, but they have two different types of atoms, or more than two different types of atoms, then they are called compound. Okay? So actually there is nothing to be confused here. But let me tell again. An atom is the simplest, the smallest fundamental unit of matter. Many same types of atoms are called elements. If the elements are joined together by covalent bond, they are called molecules. If the molecule is consisted of only one type of atom, they are not compound. If they are consisted of more than two types of atom, then they are compound. Sodium chloride is not a molecule, but sodium chloride is a compound because it consists of two types of atoms. That is more than one, sodium and chlorine. Okay, so what is a substance? A substance is basically a matter that has a specific composition and property. So what is matter? Anything that has weight and occupies space is called a matter. Anything. So say for example, if I say water is a substance. because it has a specific specific composition. 2:1 ratio of hydrogen and oxygen, and it also has a specific property. But say if I say, for example, salt water, it is not a substance, it is a mixture of water and sodium chloride. It doesn't have a specific property. Okay, so this is what substance means. Let's get back to our studying. Water. In most organisms, almost 80% of the body is made up of water. We have seen that cytoplasm is a solution of many different substances in water. We know what is a solution. Solvent plus solute makes a solution. The spaces between our cells are also filled with watery liquid. Inside every living organism, chemical reactions are going on all the time. These reactions are called metabolism. What is a metabolism? Metabolism is both catabolism and anabolism makes a metabolism. So metabolism is actually a chemical process, and catabolism is the chemical process by which complex molecules are broken into simpler ones, and anabolism is the chemical process in which complex molecules are made from simpler ones. It's a chemical process. It cannot be physical. If you physically break something or make something, that is not metabolism. It has to be something like a chemical reaction. Okay. Metabolic reactions can only take place if the chemicals are dissolved in water. Which are reacting are dissolved in water. Water is an important solvent. Solvent means it can dissolve substances, solutes. All the proteins, enzymes, and everything are the solutes, and the solvent is water, and they both makes the solution. Our like cytoplasm. So cytoplasm is actually a solution. Also blood plasma. This is one reason why water is so important to living organisms. If the cells die out, the reaction stop and the organism die. Without chemical reaction, how can our organism live? Water is also needed for other reasons. For example, plasma, the liquid part of blood, contains a lot of water, so that substances like glucose can dissolve in it. These dissolved substances are transported around the body. Water is also needed to dissolve enzymes and nutrients in the alimentary canal, so the digestion can take place. Alimentary canal is basically the route from our mouth to our anus, which our food has to pass. And digestion takes place in our mouth, stomach, and also intestines. It is actually the process by which the polymers, that is the large molecules, fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, are like broken into their monomers, or simpler substances like proteins into amino acids, fats into fatty acids, and glycerol are broken into simpler substances so that they can be taken up by our blood vessels and can be transported to all the cells, so that they can be used to generate energy by the process of respiration, or can be used to make repair damaged tissues, and many other work. We will learn them in the next chapters. We also need water to help us get rid of waste products. As you will see in chapter 2 of the kidneys remove waste products, urea, from our body. The urea is dissolved in water, forming urine. So urea plus water makes urine, and if you don't have water, then the urea cannot be excreted. Excreted is the process by which the waste products are eliminated from our body, and without this the urea cannot be excreted, and it will harm the cells and damage them in our body. Carbohydrates include starches and sugars. Their molecule contains 3 kinds of atom: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. A carbohydrate molecule has about twice as many hydrogen atoms as carbon atoms or oxygen atoms. So basically the empirical formula is this: CnH twice NON. So if there is 1 atom of carbon, there are 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. Then if there are 2 atoms of carbon, then there are 4 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of nitrogen. Now don't ask what is an empirical formula. You should have learned it in your chemistry course. A glucose molecule is made of 6 carbon atoms joined in a ring, with the hydrogen and oxygen atom pointing out from and into the ring. This is the picture. This is actually an alpha glucose, and there is also beta glucose. That is the alpha glucose, This is the carbon number 1 beside oxygen. In carbon number 1, if the hydroxide is below, it is called alpha, and if the hydroxide is above, it is called beta. You do not need to learn about alpha glucose and beta glucose in your O levels, but in your A levels, you will need to learn this. So for now, just this is the structure of a glucose. A glucose molecule contains 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. To show this, its molecular formula can be written as C6H12O6. This formula stands for one molecule of this simple sugar and tells you which atom it contains and how many of each kind. Although they contain many atoms, simple sugar molecules are very small, they are soluble in water, and they taste sweet. If two simple sugar molecules join together, a large molecule called a complex sugar or a disaccharide is made. Disaccharide is like two monomers joined together. Two examples of complex sugars are sucrose and maltose. Like simple sugars, they are soluble in water and taste sweet. So both sucrose and maltose are disaccharides. So why do they have different names? That's because their orientation, that is how they are assembled, is different. But they are disaccharides. They contain two glucose molecules, like two monomers. But detail about these molecules you do not have to learn in this chapter. So polysaccharides. If many simple sugars join together, a very large molecule called a polysaccharide is made. Some polysaccharide molecules contain thousands of sugar molecules joined together in a long chain. The cellulose of a plant cell is a polysaccharide, and so is starch, which is often found inside the plant cells. Animal cells often contain a polysaccharide called glycogen. Most polysaccharides are insoluble and do not taste sweet. Most, not all. So if more than two monomers join together, then they are called polymers. But if monosaccharides, more than two monosaccharides join together, they are called polysaccharides. Okay, nothing much to understand here. Now, functions of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are needed for energy. It is like this energy is found by the process of respiration. You will learn detail about respiration in your A levels. 1 gram of carbohydrate releases 17 kilojoule of energy. The energy is released by respiration. The carbohydrate that is normally used in respiration is glucose. This is also the form in which carbohydrate is transported around mammal's body. Human blood plasma contains dissolved glucose being transported to all cells. The cells use the glucose to release energy that they need to carry out the processes of life. Plants do not use glucose. Plants also use glucose in respiration to provide them with energy. However, they do not transport glucose around their body. Instead, they transport sucrose. They do not transport glucose, they transport sucrose, which is a disaccharide. The cells change the sucrose to glucose when they need to use it. And of course, enzymes are needed. Plants store carbohydrates as starch. It is quick and easy to change glucose into starch or starch into glucose. These are metabolism, metabolic reactions, and they are chemical reactions, and they need enzymes. Some plants store large quantities of starch in their seeds or tubers and use this as food. Animals do not store starch. Instead, they store carbohydrate in the form of polysaccharide glycogen. However, only small quantities of glycogen can be stored. It is mostly stored in the cells, in the liver and the muscles. The polysaccharide cellulose is used to make the crisscrossing fibers from which plant cells are constructed. Cellulose fibers are very strong, so the cell wall helps to maintain the shape of the plant cell. Nothing much to understand. Testing for carbohydrate. We can test for the presence of sugar by adding Benedict's solution to a food and heating it. If food contains reducing sugar, then a brick red color will be produced. The mixture changes gradually from blue through green, yellow and orange, and finally brick red. If there is no reducing sugar, then Benedict's solution remains blue. Easy. The test for starch is easier as it does not involve heating. You simply add iodine solution to a sample of food. If there is starch present, a blue-black color is obtained. If there is no starch, the iodine solution remains orange. So, for testing reducing sugar, such as glucose or maltose, we use Benedict's solution and then heat it. And to test for starch, we use iodine. Okay, very easy. Now fats. Fats are also known as lipids. Like carbohydrates, fats contain only 3 kinds of atoms: carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. A fat molecule is made of 4 smaller molecules joined together. 1 fatty acid and 3 glycerols. No, sorry, 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids. One of these is glycerol. Attached to glycerol are 3 long molecules called fatty acids. Fats are insoluble in water. Fats that are liquid at room temperature are called oils. But if one of the fatty acid chain is replaced by a phosphate group, then the phosphate group causes a hydrophilic head, that is, it attracts water molecules, and so like the fat molecules become 50% hydrophilic and 50% hydrophobic. That is, 50% it attracts water and the other body, hydrophobic body, do not attract water. Okay, so functions of fat, like carbohydrates, fats and oils, can be used in a cell to release energy. A gram of fat gives about 39 kilojoule of energy. This is more than twice as much energy as released by a gram of carbohydrate. That's because you learn later, fats contain longer chains of hydrogen than carbon, hydrogen than there are in carbohydrates, and the longer the hydrogen chains there are, the more energy can be produced in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. In your A levels, you will learn why this happens. However, most cells use carbohydrate first when they need energy, and only use fats when all the available carbohydrates have been used. The extra energy that fats contain makes them very, very useful for storing energy. In mammals, some cells, particularly ones underneath the skin, become filled with large droplets of fats or oil. These stores can be used to release energy when needed. The layer of cells is called adipose tissue. Adipose tissue also helps to keep heat inside the body, that is, it insulates body. Animals such as walrus, which live in very cold places, often have especially thick layers of adipose tissue called blubber. Many plants store oils in their seeds, for example peanut, coconut and castor oil. The oil provide a good store of energy for germination. And nothing much to understand here. Now tests for fats and oils. There are several different tests for fats. One of the best is ethanol emulsion test. Firstly, you chop the food and shake it up with ethanol. All fats will not dissolve in water, they do dissolve in ethanol. Next, you pour the ethanol into water. If there was any fat in the food, then fat ethanol mixture breaks up in millions of tiny droplets, and when it is mixed with water, the mixture is called emulsion. It looks white and opaque like milk. If there is no fat in the food, the mixture of water and ethanol remains transparent. So say for example, if you shake a coconut oil with ethanol and shake it, and then you pour that mixture into water, you will, if there is fat in coconut oil, there is fat, the mixture will be like opaque, it will turn white. But if there is no fat, if you use other sources, then the mixture will remain transparent. Okay, so proteins. Protein molecule contains some kinds of atoms which carbohydrate and fats do not, as well as carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. They also contain nitrogen and small amount of sulfur. So we have seen that many glucose molecules makes sucrose, maltose, and other like starch, cellulose. But so like the monomer of carbohydrates, the monomers of the polymer starch or starch, and glycogen is glucose. But the monomer of proteins are amino acids. Okay, amino acids contain nitrogen too, and also a bit of sulfur. You will know like why do they contain a bit of nitrogen and why do they contain a bit of sulfur in your A levels. Like polysaccharides, protein molecules are made of long chains of smaller molecules joined end to end. The smaller molecules are called amino acids. There are about 20 different kinds of amino acids. Any of these 20 can be joined together in any order to make a protein. Each protein is made of molecules with amino acids in a precise order. Even a small difference in the order of amino acids makes a different protein. So there are millions of different proteins which could be made. So there are 20 types of amino acids. Now the sequence of amino acids makes a particular protein. Even if like a single amino acid is different in any protein, it is a different protein. So the sequence of amino acids is the identity of a specific protein. Okay, very easy. Functions of proteins. Some proteins are soluble in water, as example in hemoglobin, the red pigment in blood. Others are insoluble in water, for example keratin. Hair and fingernails are made of keratin. There are many things are made of protein, like antibodies, our hair, our nails. Almost everything in our body is made of protein. And like carbohydrates, proteins are not normally used to provide energy. Many of the proteins in food you eat are used for making new cells. New cells are needed for growing and for repairing damaged part of the body. In particular, cell membrane and cytoplasm contains a lot of proteins. Protein is really important for living organisms. Proteins are also needed to make antibodies. These help to kill bacteria and virus inside the body. Enzymes are also proteins. You will learn more about antibodies in your later chapters, in your immune response chapter, which you have in your O levels. The long chains of amino acids from which protein molecules are formed can curl up into different shapes. The way in which the chains curl up and therefore the three-dimensional shape of the protein molecule is determined by the sequence of amino acids in the chain. Okay, just let me give you a brief idea, as you won't have any until you are in your A levels. Say for example a specific sequence of amino acids. This is a protein. Okay, and like there may be like so the protein molecules initially curl up to form like this helical structure, just like a DNA, you know, like this, that is in a round shape. Okay, just like, you know, something like this, you know. This helical structure, I mean how the helical structure is going to be. Remember we have learned that the enzymes are really specific to the substrate it catalyzes. So the shape of the protein, which is determined by partly by this helical structure, is determined by the sequence of amino acids, because different amino acids form different types of hydrogen bonds with the different types of amino acids. So that's why the enzymes are really specific in their work. And not to mention, this is the primary structure and this is the secondary structure. In the tertiary structure, this helix further curls up to form something like maybe like this. This is the tertiary structure. And now the quaternary structure, you know, maybe 2 or 3 tertiary structures like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, joins together to form the final product. This is the quaternary structure you will learn in your A levels. So this is not necessary for your O levels, this is just to make you understand, because the precise orientation of the primary primary structure is this quaternary structure is responsible. This primary structure is responsible for the secondary structure, which is responsible for the tertiary structure. Ultimately, all of this depends on the type of amino acids. The specific type of amino acids will cause specific type of curling in the secondary structure, tertiary structure, and also specific type of bonding of different tertiary structures to form this quaternary structure. So the amino acid, the proteins are really specific in their work. This is not necessary in your O levels, but this is just to make you understand. Now this is a helical structure. This is a DNA, but this is a helical structure. Now, different sequence of amino acids result in different shapes of protein molecules. For most protein molecules, this shape directly affects their function. For example, you will see in chapter 5 some protein molecules called enzymes act as catalysts. The shape of the enzyme molecule determines which reactions it can catalyze. Similarly, the shape of an antibody molecule determines the kind of bacteria or virus that it can attach to. Different shapes of antibody molecules are needed to bind to different kinds of bacteria, virus. Each different kind of antibody therefore has a different sequence of amino acids from which it is made. Like enzymes, antibodies are also really specific in their work. The specific types of antibodies help to defeat or eliminate or to kill, just to make you guys understand the specific kinds of viruses or pathogens. Viruses are pathogens. Okay, you learn it in your immune response chapter in details. So the basic is that the specific kind of amino acid is responsible for the specific type of protein. Now DNA. DNA stands for Deoxyribonucleic Acid. DNA is the chemical that makes up our genes and chromosomes. It is a material which inherit from our parents, which gives us many of our characteristics. You will learn detail about this in your genetic chapter, but think about this. All of us have different types of DNA. That's why all of us are different. Different types of skin color. Maybe my skin color may not match with yours. That's because you have other types of DNA than mine. And for example, my hair color may be different from yours. There's some people may have blonde hair, some people have brown hair, some people like me have black hair. That's because we have different types of DNA, which makes different types of proteins. So that's why different color is expressed. Okay, these are really interesting. Once you learn a lot about them, you will start understanding biology even more in a interesting way. So we inherit DNA from our parents. And why it is called deoxyribonucleic acid? That's because in DNA one of the oxygen is missing, but in RNA that oxygen is not missing in the carbon. So ribonucleic acid is because it is made up of ribose sugar with a phosphate background, the phosphate backbone. Another phosphate, another pentose, ribose sugar. Okay, so this is actually the nucleotide, the monomer of DNA. You learn it in your later chapters, but this is not necessary right now. Figure 4.14 shows the structure of a very small part of DNA molecule. It is made of two long strands, each with a series of bases arranged along it. The bases on the two strands are held together by bonds. I'm sorry, I forgot to give the base here. I'm so sorry. forgot to give the base. This is the ribose sugar. This is the phosphate backbone, and this is the nitrogenous base. Okay. The bases on the two strands are held together by bonds, forming cross links. The two strands then twist around into a kind of spiral called a helix. So this is a strand of DNA. This is another strand of DNA. The bases form hydrogen bonds. The two bases form hydrogen bonds, and so these two strands are actually connected by hydrogen bonds, and then they twist into an helical structure. This is called alpha helix, just like the secondary structure of a protein. There are four kinds of bases known by letter A: C, G, and T. If you look carefully at figure 1.4, you will see that T and A are always link up with each other, and also C and G, the bases always pair up in this way. So A for adenine, G for guanine, C for cytosine, T for thymine. DNA has thymine, but RNA has uracil instead of thymine. So adenine always forms hydrogen bond with thymine, while cytosine always forms hydrogen bond with guanine. This is their complementary bases. Now you will learn about this in the later chapter, so no need to worry. And a sequence of the bases in our DNA provides a code that is used to determine the kinds of protein that are made in our cell. This in turn determines how our cells, tissues, and organs develop. The sequence determines that you are a human and not a tree, as well as many of your personal characters such as your hair color and your blood group. In chapter 18 you will find out more about how DNA does this. Okay, so let me just give a basic just so that you know, but keep calm. In the later chapter, chapter 18, I will give detailed understanding about how the DNA works. So this is a DNA. The DNA forms RNA, which forms into proteins. The DNA is in the nucleus, the RNA is in the cytoplasm, and the proteins, they are formed by the organelle ribosomes. How to do this? In great detail you will learn your A levels, but you will have a good amount of understanding in your O levels in your chapter 18. Okay, so yeah, that's the end of our chapter.